Live from Washington, D.C., Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now. And now, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Sekulow.
Welcome back, everybody. We've got a lot to talk about. Turkey, a referendum passes in Turkey. That referendum gives more power to Erdogan, who's becoming a lot more like a Islamic dictator than an elected president of his country. That's number one. Number two, North Korea tried a saber rattle again, but this time there was not so successful. Their saber rattling was again a not successful launch of a weapon, but it was with a lot of fanfare. There is reports that the United States engaged in cyber warfare to engage that area. I want Skip Ash, our senior military analyst and senior lawyer for the ACLJ on international law and law of war, to explain to people. We talk about the demilitarized zone in Korea being 2.5 miles wide. There's a lot of action on that front, though, Skip. And North Korea could reach the population center in Seoul very easily.
That's correct. The Seoul, right, is within artillery range of the batteries just north of the DMZ in North Korea. So, and that is the major invasion route into South Korea. Is it's called the Americans call it a bowling alley. It's a valley that comes right down into northern Seoul, and it's the way they traditionally have attacked into the south, and it makes Seoul very vulnerable. So it's something that we have to keep in mind. Now, the Korean forces and the U.S. forces practice all the time on defending that. But they have tremendous dug-in artillery in the north, and that's very hard to root out. So it'd be very hard to neutralize initially.
Yeah, but I want to be very clear here that we're looking at, I think, a serious engagement going on right now. Jordan, you're in Washington, and I know this is the topic of a lot of conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even at the White House Easter egg roll, President Trump was asked about North Korea and the test of the weapon. Obviously, it failed, but this has been a focus, obviously, of the Trump foreign policy coming together, not allowing these strongmen around the world who have gotten away with basically violating these deals, whether it is North Korea, which had nuclear deals going back to President Clinton that they violated, to Assad with the chemical weapons, violating that deal done under President Obama, to not let these strongmen operate however they wish.
It's also interesting that the United States Navy has the aircraft carrier group Carl Vinson also in the region. So China being put under a lot of pressure as well, and that was part of the conversation that took place at Mar-a-Lago last week between the president and the premier of China. And I think what you're seeing develop there is real pressure being put on the North Koreans. Having said that, they flexed their muscles over the weekend, as they traditionally do, but also as they traditionally do, their weaponry was not successful. There are reports that that weapon launch was not successful, in part because of the United States military and perhaps a cyber attack initiated by the United States that impacted that. All right, we're taking your calls on this. We've got developments in Turkey as well, as Erdogan gets more power in moving in an Islamist direction. We'll take your calls and your comments.
Today, you can also join us on Facebook and Periscope. We can get your comments in, and we'll take some of those during the break and during the show.
Mike Pence called North Korea's failed missile launch a provocation. It has been ongoing. This time, though, the statement, Jordan, that the time for the era, is what he calls it, of strategic patience is over, also says a lot.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the idea, again, that we are not going to just sit back and allow these irrational regimes to do as they wish, and that we're going to confront their dangers. And so I think it's the sending the signals, whether it was the bomb that was dropped in Afghanistan, the carrier group in the Korean peninsula, again, striking Syria, not letting them after that chemical weapons attack. These are all to send a message.
We've got a lot more ahead on the situation in North Korea and the situation in Turkey. Christians are under attack in Turkey. There's no religious freedom, of course, in North Korea. So we've got a lot to talk about. Don't forget our matching challenge campaign. You can participate at aclj.org. Any amount you donate, we're getting a matching gift for that. It's aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's 989-2255 or aclj.org.
It is a critical time for our nation, and the American Center for Law and Justice is on the front lines, defending life and liberty, engaging the issues that matter most to you and your family. Whether it's working to protect Americans from the dangers of radical Islam and the persecution of Christians, to defending life at the U.S. Supreme Court, to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms, we could not do this work without you, without your support. And now your support can really make a tremendous difference. For a limited time, you can participate in the ACLJ Matching Challenge. If you make a gift now, it will be doubled. $25 becomes $50. A $100 gift becomes $200. Please stand with the ACLJ right now and call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or go online at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.
Mike Pence gives the warning. The vice president says the time for strategic patience is over. And also he says that North Korea better not push the president. Let me play some sound here. This is Mike Pence.
The era of strategic patience is over. President Trump has made it clear that the patience of the United States and our allies in this region has run out. And we want to see change. We want to see North Korea abandon its reckless path of the development of nuclear weapons.
All right, so that was Vice President Pence at the DMZ. Joining us now is Skip Ash, Senior Counsel for the ACLJ, also one of our most senior military people who served as the United States Army Colonel in South Korea. Explain to everybody first what the DMZ zone is.
The DMZ zone is called the demilitarized zone. This is an area about 2.5 miles wide that separates the two sides. Remember, the situation in South Korea and North Korea on the Korean Peninsula is still one of war. There's only been an armistice since the end of the Korean War. There's never been a peace treaty. So technically, both sides are still at war. And this demilitarized zone, which is an area between the two sides, highly mined by both sides, is the area that separates both the North and the South.
We do have some comments coming in. People are asking specifically about the failed launches. Said, do we have anything to do with that? Why did their launches keep failing? Is it a technological issue? Why are these failed launches?
Okay, so there is a lot of reports out right now and speculation that this was, in fact, cyber warfare from the United States Army. I know that's running around Washington right now, too, but we have done it before. I mean, we've been able to utilize technology to cause these missiles to fail. Jordan, they keep trying. But every time they try and fail, I think it does not bode well for North Korea. But also they're pushing the president. This president doesn't seem to be like to be pushed around.
No, and again, no one is going to ever confirm whether or not that was the case. If it was the U.S. government or our allies that were responsible for the failure of this missile, but it is certainly something that's plagued North Korea. They have the nuclear weaponry, they have the missiles, but they're not ever able to really combine them into an actual weapon that can be successfully launched, even during a test mode. And that is, again, I think some of the reason why past administrations kind of pushed them aside. But I think what we realize is that when you've got these bad actors in the world, if they're going to keep working on trying to get those weapons to work, and at what point do you draw, again, a red line and say, you've crossed it now? And North Korea broke that promise with the United States in the 1990s. They had a deal set up with the Clinton administration, and since then they have been violating it. And talk about unstable, questionable leaders of a mass of people, and you look at the leadership of North Korea.
Let's go ahead and take a phone call.
All right, let's go to line 2. Let's go to Pauline, who's calling from Maine.
Hey, Pauline.
Yes, hi. I just bless God that we have a president that can act in a decisive manner. And as much as I don't like our troops going in harm's way, if if something's not done now, it's going to be much worse later, and I'll just hang up.
All right, well, let me ask Skip Ash again. Skip is a retired colonel in the United States Army, served 2 tours in Korea. Skip, I asked you during the break the danger here with Korea, South Korea, and North Korea, and the conflict with the North Koreans. What do you think?
Well, the one thing that the North Koreans are trying to get is nuclear weapons, deliverable nuclear weapons, because then they will become someone to respect in the world. Right now, their economy is a basket case. Their influence around the world is virtually nil. But if they become a nuclear power, then they have they'll have the weaponry needed to blackmail those nations around them to start giving them things that they can't produce themselves. So they want to do that to become a nation that will be recognized in the world, and it will begin to live up to some of the propaganda that they give to their own people.
So we've already deployed the USS Vincent, which is actually out of Norfolk, Virginia, where you're coming out of today, one of the biggest naval bases in the world, that is now in the region. What message is that sending, Skip?
Well, that's sending a message that we've heard what's going on, and we're getting our forces ready in case something happens. So this is a saber-rattling thing. Is
this a containable conflict? Here's what you said this earlier, that this has the potential to spin out of control if we're not careful. Let me play what, again, Vice President Pence said at the DMZ in Korea. This is what, on the peninsula, this is what he said, number 18.
Just in the past 2 weeks, the world witnessed the strength and resolve of our new president in actions taken in Syria and Afghanistan. North Korea would do well not to test his resolve or the strength of the armed forces of the United States in this region.
So a conflict with North Korea looks like what, Skip, playing out?
Well, the conventional conflict would be they have a huge military, and their artillery is dug in just north of the demilitarized zone, and Seoul, the capital of South Korea, is within artillery range. The U.S. forces, the Army forces, are within artillery range of the North. So they have massive artillery. It's dug in. They learned from what happened during the Gulf Wars, and they have beefed it up and protected their artillery. So it would start with a massive artillery attack and an invasion across the DMZ. And remember, they've been digging tunnels for years, too. So we are constantly looking for tunnels that they're digging under the DMZ to come up behind our forces.
So Jordan, go ahead. Finish up, Skip.
Well, it would just be it would be an initial bloodbath, and the civilians in Seoul would pay a high price.
So the conflict has real consequences. Jordan, do you view this right now as political saber rattling, or getting the Chinese to understand, take this seriously, we're not kidding?
I think after the actions in Syria and Afghanistan, it is not just saber rattling, and it's not just threatening the Chinese. I think we have shown that you won't be able to predict when this president will authorize or give the authorization to the military to carry out strikes. Obviously, the situation Skip just explained in Korea is even more volatile, and so you have to be very careful there because of who they're bordering and the kind of weaponry that they do have that does work. But again, it is a different foreign policy, certainly than we have seen in the last 8 years, where the U.S. is willing to flex its muscles right on the, coming right into your borders.
Yep.
And I think we see that through the fleet in the Korean Peninsula right now.
So we're at a very critical point. The question is, and I guess it's the question I want to, before we take a call here, the question I want to kind of put out there is, are we looking at a real, I'll start with Skip, then I'll go to Jordan. But, Skip, are we looking at a real conflict here, or are we really trying to pressure the Chinese to get the North Korean? They're their ally, to get them in line.
Well, the Chinese do not want a war on the Korean Peninsula because over time, the North Koreans would either lose or the Chinese would have to intervene, and that's not in their best interest right now. So they're trying to dampen it down, and I think the president has made it clear to them that if they don't take care of their own client state, then they're the ones who are going to have to pay the price. One thing we need to keep in mind is this is really unnerving the Japanese, and they're talking about getting nuclear weapons, and that would completely freak out the Chinese. So it's in the Chinese interest to rein in North Korea now.
So North Korea is the agitator, Jordan, in the region. That's what's happening here, and what we're doing is putting pressure on governments we work with, is particularly here the Chinese, to let them know we're taking this seriously and you better get this under control. And if you don't, that will force us to take action, which nobody really wants to do here.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there is obviously the pressure points from China, the Chinese economy, the oil specifically that they control that flows into North Korea. If as they did threaten to put a halt to some of that oil and any of those exports into North Korea, that is so vital for that regime to even keep in control. If they put a halt to that, it cripples the regime, and it's a very fine balance, as Skip said, between crippling the regime, bringing down the regime. I think for those who care about fundamental human rights, it's tough to make these kind of realpolitik decisions about North Korea. You'd like to see this regime go. They are one of the, if not the most abusive government in the world, but because you have to understand the impact it has on not just a few million people or 100 million people, but billions of people. If that regime was to fall, you have to be really prepared for that.
All right, a lot of comments are coming in about China, asking, is China helping with North Korea? Are they helping us? Where are we with China?
So China's there was a meeting at Mar-a-Lago last week between the head of China and the President of the United States, and North Korea was discussed. So the question you're asking is the right question. Are the Chinese now on board with de-escalating the conflict in the region? That really is the fundamental question that has to be asked here. Will the Chinese de-escalate the tension in the region by maintaining basically their trading partner state? Skip, we got just 20 seconds here. I think that becomes the question of the day.
I think it really is, and the Chinese are now counting the costs. What do they have to lose? What do they have to gain? And they have more to gain by reining them in.
We've got a lot more ahead, folks, including our senior military analysts, Colonel Wes Smith and Colonel Skip Ash, both of which who have served in Korea. We also want to encourage you to participate in our matching challenge campaign. Any amount you donate to the ACLJ, we're getting a matching gift for. That's at aclj.org, aclj.org, or 1-877-989-2255. aclj.org, or 1-877-989-2255.
It is a critical time for our nation, and the American Center for Law and Justice is on the front lines, defending life and liberty, engaging the issues that matter most to you and your family. Whether it's working to protect Americans from the dangers of radical Islam and the persecution of Christians, to defending life at the U.S. Supreme Court, to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms, we could not do this work without you, without your support. And now your support can really make a tremendous difference. For a limited time, you can participate in the ACLJ Matching Challenge. If you make a gift now, it will be doubled. $25 becomes $50. A $100 gift becomes $200. Please stand with the ACLJ right now and call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or go online at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.
We've got a lot of calls coming, but I want to ask a question. And that is, and I'm going to ask it to all three here. So, and Logan, because we're getting a lot of these. Some people are saying still, what if we do nothing, right?
Right.
You're getting that on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, most people I'd say are the opposite of that, but a lot of people are saying that.
Okay, so if we do nothing, and here's the question. What if, and I'll start with Skip, you gave this answer to Facebook and Periscope, but not for our radio audience. So what if you do nothing, or what do you do if you do something?
If we do nothing, we're going to have a time when they get the nuclear weapons, they will begin to blackmail us and other nations in the region, and that's going to encourage the Japanese to develop nuclear weapons, which will really freak out the Chinese. So it's in their best interest never to get to that point.
So what do you do? So what do you do if you're the President of the United States?
If we get to the point that we determine that they're on the brink of getting nuclear weapons, we have to take action, and we have to then just be prepared for what happens after that, which may be a war on the Korean Peninsula.
So, and Jordan, your theory is then that President Trump right now trying to avoid that is using the Chinese as leverage.
Yeah, that's right. And to try and let the Chinese know who is in charge, basically, of the world, who is the world superpower, and bossing them around a bit. I mean, that's not how they would want to be ever describe it, but I think that is the key, is that if you want us to kind of move along in the relationship with the U.S. and not cause trouble for you, Chinese regime, which is again, not comparable to the abuses of North Korea, but is not too far behind in the way it treats its own people. If you want to feel comfortable or safe in your region and in your leadership as the Communist Party there, then you're going to have to go along with some of our requests when it comes to North Korea. And if you don't, we're going to have a carrier strike group ready that can implement the wishes of the United States government on our own. And the president has said just that. I mean, he literally said,
I know.
if Chinese don't do it, we will.
Yeah. What do you think, Wes?
I tell you what, there are no good answers, but it is a problem that we can't walk away from. If we allow North Korea to become nuclear capable, they will blackmail the rest of the world. They are short on food. They are short on fuel.
Yep.
At the beginning of World War II, the reason that Japan used, it wasn't a good reason, that they justified their attack on Pearl Harbor, is that we would not sell them steel and fuel. North Korea is not rational. At least Japan was somewhat rational. So there's not a good answer. Skip's right. We can allow it to happen.
Yep.
We would have to take a strategic strike on all of their nuclear facilities and their missile facilities if they get to that place. But they would probably, more than likely, launch conventional weapons across the DMZ. Seoul is within artillery range of North Korea.
Yeah.
You're talking, even with conventional weapons, Jay, you're talking about thousands of people on the peninsula
So
dying.
the Chinese need to do their job here, which is get their ally in control. All right, let's grab these phone calls. That's the last thing of the broadcast.
Let's go to Ryan in Arizona.
Hi, Ryan. Go ahead quickly, please.
Who's the South Korea leader now that the other lady got arrested?
So they've got they have an interim president that's in place right now. I mean, that's what it is. This is an interim president who's in place. That's what we have. Do we know much?
The election is coming up fairly quickly.
Yes.
Right.
So there'll be an election. They are Jordan, they're more of a democracy. They will have an election, and they will pick a new president.
You know, Jay, one of the things that China could do to really help us is they could undermine Kim Jong-un and go for regime change, not us, but China.
Yeah, well, I mean, that would be an approach. Let's go ahead and take another call.
All right, keep going. Let's go to Bob on line 4 in Maine.
Hey, Bob.
Hello. Thank you very much.
Sure.
My thought is I agree with the administration's points and stance. However, I was wondering what your guests would think about a Cuban-style
blockade.
Blockade.
Yeah, let me go. Skip. What about a military a blockade of North Korea? We brought the USS Vincent, the aircraft carrier strike group there. Would that be a secondary if China does not succeed? Is that how you go next?
Well, what would happen is the blockade worked in Cuba because the Russians blinked, but it was an act of war. We have to recognize that. Then we would be the ones initiating the act of war. And the problem with North Korea is they do have a land boundary with China, and whether China could tolerate that or not, I don't know. So they could begin to get goods across the Chinese border. So I don't think a blockade is going to work.
Yeah, Jordan, as far as the Chinese go, and we've done work in China, so we know this. We've been there. What's your sense of their degree of participation as far as willingness here? Wes mentioned that they rejected a couple of coal transfers. They're saying they're talking. What do you think they would really do here? I mean, they don't want a conflict in this region.
No, they don't. But they do always yearn for stability because that's how they thrive. They thrive by people following rules and by people staying in line and by not going to the extremes. And so I don't think, by the way, they love this North Korean government. I mean, for any means. I don't think that they're prepared yet for the downfall of that. They're very concerned about what that means because, again, I said they crave stability because that is how they thrive. That regime in China doesn't work when you have chaos. And so that is, to me, why you can push on them a lot to get this regime as much as possible. You got to understand who you're dealing with. You're dealing with people who believe that they are God.
Right.
And when you are dealing with those kind of individuals, you can put pressure on them. You can cut off their people from food. You can cut off their own. They're not going to make decisions always based on the right decision. But at the end of the day, does Un himself, is he concerned enough about the loss of his own life that he won't push too far? He's a young leader who is obviously very paranoid.
All right, let's go ahead and take another call.
All right, Andy in Missouri, quickly. You're on line 5.
Hey, Andy.
Thanks, Jay.
Yep.
Concerned about the level of military preparedness after 8 years of Barack Obama administration.
All right, so that's a good question. So, West, militarily, do we have the capability if needed? I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. The military in Korea is always on guard. When I was stationed there for 13 months, we practiced defending, South Korea. We actually practiced preemptive strikes going into North Korea if it came to that. They practice evacuation drills to get civilians out on a regular basis. It doesn't mean there would not be casualties, but they are prepared.
So, Skip, any doubt on the capability of the United States military here if we had to?
No, I think we could get the forces there and we could overwhelm them.
All right, let's go ahead and grab these last two calls.
All right, we'll do our best. Let's go to Sandy in Pennsylvania, line 1.
Hi, Sandy, go ahead.
Oh, hey, Jay. First off, I want to tell you how much I enjoy seeing you on Fox.
Oh, thanks.
I love when you're on.
Appreciate
You're one of the few that makes sense.
Supposed to be on tonight. We'll see what the world events become. But go ahead, Sandy. Thanks.
I just want to say that all these lefty losers out there marching in the street for Trump's tax return, we've seen tax returns on the last group for 8 years.
Yeah, tax returns aren't really doing the trick here. And I think that in light of world events, Sandy, you're absolutely correct. All right, let's grab the last call.
All right, Jose's calling line 2. Greece, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello, Jose.
I think probably one of the best solutions would be is just to somehow eliminate him. And that would be resolve all
regime
the
change on Kim Jong-un. Skip, quickly, and then Wes.
Well, I think, as Wes said, I think if the Chinese could do that, they could then stabilize the follow-on government, and that would solve the problem very nicely.
Yeah, so regime change.
Yes, taking him out either through regime change or through assassination by China would solve the problem.
And Jordan, do you think that that's something the Chinese would encourage at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they'd encourage it, but if we put the pressure on, say, hey, we don't want full-scale war, we want this family out of power, make that happen for us, and we'll help you significantly with your trade and economy. Yeah, I could see them going that route.
Well, that's going to do it for our broadcast today. Don't forget our matching challenge campaign. Let me talk to our audience here. Each and every week we come to you on air, or you see our lawyers engaged literally all over the world. We have worked extensively in China. We've been talking about North Korea today. We've been to South Korea. We have been all over Asia. Your support of the ACLJ allows us to engage these issues on a global basis. So let me encourage you, the matching challenge campaign means any amount you donate, you not only get a tax deduction for, but we get a matching gift for. So ACLJ.org. That's ACLJ.org. Or you can call in your pledge at 1-877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255 or ACLJ.org.
It is a critical time for our nation, and the American Center for Law and Justice is on the front lines, defending life and liberty, engaging the issues that matter most to you and your family. Whether it's working to protect Americans from the dangers of radical Islam and the persecution of Christians, to defending life at the U.S. Supreme Court, to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms, we could not do this work without you, without your support. And now your support can really make a tremendous difference. For a limited time, you can participate in the ACLJ Matching Challenge. If you make a gift now, it will be doubled. $25 becomes $50. A $100 gift becomes $200. Please stand with the ACLJ right now and call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or go online at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.